debating, interviewing. You know that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all roomy up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
What's up, boys?
I haven't heard your voice in quite some time.
I know, even talking to you for 3 minutes just now, I was like, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been. And we don't work together, so I don't get the luxury of hanging out.
What? Wait, I haven't talked to him in months, dude.
Yeah, Andrew and I, if you go through our Slack history at work, it's just me and him sending each other the memes. We would text each other when we're not at work.
Yeah, or
Yep,
if it's too spicy, we
sense.
text them to each other directly. So there's only like a flow of memes right now. That's the information highway.
Memes and NBA drama.
Yeah, those are memes, right? Did you guys watch
How do you
Invincible yet? Invincible is a comic book series by Robert Kirkman, and it was adapted into a TV show by Amazon Prime. And I love it. I love it so much that after the second season finished last year, I got so upset that I spent the next 20 to 30 hours successively reading all of the available compendiums of the comic book. And season 3, the first 3 episodes were released yesterday, and it's the only good thing that happened in 2025. And I'm just very excited about it.
Do you watch Severance?
Yes. I also
'Cause
watched
that's
last
also
night's
a
Severance.
good thing. I haven't watched last night's, but that is also a good thing to come out of 2025.
Last night's was really good.
Dude, that show, I don't even understand how it's so good.
Dude, it's great. I'm lucky that my project partner Diogo watches Severance. I'm trying to get him to watch Invincible, but he watches them like a day later than me, which is frustrating. So I wake up the next morning and I'm ready to discuss it. And he's like, I'm going to watch it tonight.
I watched Shrinking on your recommendation, and that is also a fantastic TV show.
So that's funny because I didn't recommend Shrinking. I recommended something else, but you're talking about the one with Jason Segel, right?
Yeah, you talked about it in Slack one day with Spencer.
I've never seen Shrinking. There's one on Apple TV about in a similar mindset with Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd that I really like.
Oh, that is what you recommended.
Yeah,
Well, Shrinking's great.
I've heard it's good.
All right. Well, I think we're done here.
Yep. I just want everyone to know that I like the new season of Invincible. It's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, dude. They're cooking. And they're staying true to the comic book source, so I'm very happy. That's the only thing I'm interested about. That's the only exciting thing going on in my life. That's the only thing I have to talk about.
What have y'all talked about on here?
Code.
We don't know.
Today, Jamie mentioned, and we're going to have a meeting later where we're going to talk about one thing we learned from the past week. And I had like a panic attack.
Screwed.
I was like, I haven't learned anything. And then my project partner sent me a list of 20 tickets that I did this week. And I'm like, wait, what?
Dude,
That reminds me of at a previous job, we had this Friday wins meeting, and it would be like, come celebrate some cool stuff you did this week. Every single time I was like, I didn't do anything cool this week. I just did what I was supposed to do.
Yes.
So I never came with anything. It actually turned out pretty cool because it became other people telling you the cool stuff you did that week. Oh yeah, I guess I did do that and this and that. I'm not going to show up to a meeting and go brag about stuff I did. The actual purpose of the person who organized that meeting, she wanted to go brag every week, and so did the CEO of the company. And I was like, this is stupid. But it was actually kind of fun when it was you show up with nothing and people are like, but you did this and you did that. Yeah, I guess that was pretty cool. But I was not going to go be that person.
no. My week, what I learned is that I spent an hour trying to fix a hanging test suite. I spent literally
Hanging
all
chads.
day on it. The next morning, Jamie came in, like made one change and it fixed it. I give up. I need to find a new job.
It wasn't important for them to bring me on it. If you need me, I'm here. And they're like, no, we don't need the big guns yet.
Yeah, that's verbatim.
That's how my week has felt. Just kind of those little things, paper cuts that are really frustrating turn out to be super simple later on. But I can run this app, bundle install, run everything just fine. But in Docker, it will bundle install everything just fine. And then the boot snap command will be like, we don't know where NetSMTP is. We don't know what that is. But you just installed it. How is this a thing? How do I even debug that? And it's in Docker, so it's just that much harder. And I'm sure it's something simple, but it's such a pain.
I used to spend hours debugging problems and images when I was trying to figure out how to get Selenium tests running inside of 2019 or 2020, dude. Those were awful. Just evenings and hours of rebuilding the images.
Yeah. My favorite. Great way to spend your time.
Love it.
Isn't it weird though? Because when you were learning, that wouldn't have felt frustrating at all. It would have felt frustrating, but you would have been like, but I don't know what I'm doing. Clearly, I need to learn. Clearly, I'm the problem. As
I
opposed
still
to at a
believe
certain
that with
point.
Docker.
I still think that sometimes.
Well, I blame Docker. It could be way better.
I'm the problem in my life, so I'm just kind of aware of that. So,
Dude, good for you. Good for
Yeah.
taking ownership, man.
yeah, there's only one problem here, and it's staring me in the mirror.
You get in there and you make this about you.
Yeah, get in there and make this about you. As someone do that meeting later, I'll be like, oh, I didn't do anything this week. I feel so useless, and just get everyone to blow smoke up my ass. Dude, it's my favorite meme.
You get in there and do that, and I'm going to be like, you're right, you worthless piece of...
Thank you. Finally, someone can confirm it.
Have y'all talked much about AI and programming on Remote Ruby?
Nah, we're real
No.
coders here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the only interesting thing I think I have to talk about on my last day. Also part of the reason why I'm not going to keep doing this because I have nothing to say anymore. But
We can AI generate your.
Yeah, dude. You don't
voice,
think I can
like-
make you live forever?
Yeah.
I'm using your voice to try to make withdrawals from your bank right now.
I don't- anyway, do either of you use AI tools as part of
No.
your coding process?
I use Copilot, and that's it.
Okay, so you do use something.
Yeah, but I don't use it a ton.
I've been really skeptical of it. I've been using it some for like the task I don't want to do.
Writing tests.
Exactly.
I was gonna say I do use
Yeah.
it to write my tests.
I don't use it so much at work for writing tests, but like in Jobboardly, write this test, but also like go make fixtures for it and stuff. And it's pretty good. It's not 100%, but I'm finding it helps with a lot of the grunt work. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I've tr-
I can see that. Last time I was using it was for integrating an API, and it was like all the endpoints are basically the same, and it can infer that stuff if you give it 2 examples.
Exactly.
Super accurate. Okay, this is convenient.
Yeah, I'll
But-
do it for stuff like a task that I don't want to do. I can't use it to write all my code for me. It doesn't work.
So the fixtures example is interesting because I just saw, I think Peter Soom was posted
Yeah.
this morning about generating seeds or whatever, and whatever the Laravel PHP
Yeah.
thing is. So typically, if I was going to write a test, I would check my fixtures to see if there was an existing one that made sense to use before just adding stuff. And I was curious, are you just adding new fixtures for every single test? And they have dedicated fixtures almost. And does that get messy? Because that would be my thing. Ideally, I have a minimal set of fixtures
Sure.
that I pull from first. And if there isn't a case in there, then I would add stuff, but I would try to avoid it. But I feel like someone new might have the tendency to just, great, let's just copy pasta and keep doing
Yeah,
that
that's what-
every single PR.
That's what it tries to do. I have a pretty small amount of fixtures for the most part, so I can mostly keep in my head what's available. So I know when it generates a test, wait a second, that's not going to work. I'll actually follow up and be like, you need to go make a fixture for this. But a lot of times what it does, at least Copilot, which Copilot's my least favorite tool to use, it will make up fixtures. So like boards 1, jobs 1, and I don't have any of those fixtures. And so that's when I'll be like, you need to look in the existing fixtures file. And if it doesn't exist, then create one. But something I've been trying recently is using it as more of a like pair programmer. So if I want to like think through a hard problem,
Do you
I'll
want to
just sit
send
down.
memes to it?
yeah, we just end up talking about politics and stuff. We get distracted like a real pair programmer. What I'll do is I just sit down, like brain dump in it, tell it, please don't be prescriptive yet. Just ask me questions and stuff like that to help me think. And it's taking me to places I wouldn't have thought I would normally go.
Like politics.
Yeah. It talks. I can't even. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just thinking about search, right? If you Google something because you're struggling with it, you're just mashing together, say, 5 words, trying to
Exactly.
remove one and put a different one in that's a synonym that's close, that maybe you find an article or something that actually is what you want. But AI can actually kind of merge that stuff a lot better than Google search ever could, which makes a lot of sense, where it can actually help you think about the concepts, whereas Google search couldn't just ever do that, because you would have to click on an article and nobody's writing that kind of stuff, which makes a lot of sense. Could be extremely helpful for helping you think through problems.
One of the most recent problems I have is how I handle locations in Jobboardly. If you create a job post, it's just like a freeform text input for a location. I send that to Google using the geocoding API. I take the first result back it gives me and just create a location record or reuse an existing one and like map the job with that location so that I can filter by locations, things like that. That's like a denormalized way to do locations, but it's not perfect and it's expensive. And so I've been like looking for alternatives. And then finally I just sat down and was like, this is my problem. Just self-host your locations. I was like, that sounds like a nightmare. I do not want to do that. But then like the more like I like worked through it with it, I was, oh, this is pretty reasonable. It pretty much helped me like map out an entire new way to store all these things in a way I wouldn't have done before. And then I was, I got to like build my own autocomplete thing now. That sucks. I tried using a bunch of NPM libraries for it, like type aheads and things. And they all like have one thing that's a deal breaker. And so then like I opened up a new thread. I prompted it with a whole thing about you don't want to rely on a bunch of JavaScript packages. You use Stimulus. You just keep it as simple as possible, making things accessible and following ARIA best practices. And it generated the most perfect Stimulus controller for autocomplete. It worked, keyboard navigation, everything.
Wow.
Damn. That's cool. I had to tweak it in little ways, but for the most part, it just worked. And it's at most 250 lines of code, no external dependencies other than Stimulus. So that's the kind of stuff I'm like, it's kind of changing the way I think about some of those problems.
I will use it to write JavaScript. I forgot about that. I will use it to write JavaScript, because the problem with writing Ruby versus writing JavaScript, because I can figure out, I need to do this thing in JavaScript, but I don't know how, versus in Ruby, it's, I need to do this thing that I don't know how to do yet, but I know how to implement it once I do.
Yeah. You almost have to translate the Ruby. You know what you would do in Ruby.
Yeah.
And translate it to JavaScript. And that's a good use case for AI to do that.
I did all of that in ChatGPT, like not in Cursor, not in Copilot. And ChatGPT has this deep research thing now where it'll go skim through the internet and show you what sources. And that's helpful because you get more diverse set of ways to do it to form the opinion of how to do it. And also you get more up-to-date information than historically you've gotten with that kind of stuff.
Imagine doing that without it. You got to go search, how do I do ARIA attributes for a autocomplete? And then I got to figure out the Stimulus thing and then try to combine them myself in my own head. And
the keyboard
conceptually,
events.
it's 15 different tree branches that you got to go down and then consolidate yourself. Whereas that's what it's doing for you. It's doing the branching and then here, let's pull it all together and help you think about it better. And that stuff is really awesome. And I need to do more of that.
Cool.
It's gotten so much better than when things first launched with ChatGPT and stuff. So it is night and day ahead of where it used to be. It's pretty good now. And that's kind of the worrying part for any juniors, is if it can do stuff that even we as seniors or higher or whatever, like struggle with, then what do you do as a junior? If it can write better code for you, then whatever.
You learn to write AI.
Yeah.
I feel like the way you need to think about it is less like, oh, it's going to replace me, and more like, oh, if I become really, really good at using AI, then I'm going to become a better, more productive developer. And that's what they're going to be looking for.
That's what I feel like too. My parents' house is being framed right now. And you can make the comparison of the nail gun is created, and everybody probably had 10 people hammering nails and taking 3 or 4 times as long to frame out a house and stuff. And then now you can do it with 2 guys and 2 nail guns super fast. And that's the kind of thing you can do so much more with it. And you got to learn to wield the tools, as opposed to like, this isn't going to replace me. I can be more efficient and do more stuff now. And I can be more capable than I could have been way faster. The amount of years I spent learning to code were so incredibly slow because we didn't really have great internet back in the day. I had dial up. I had not great search. There wasn't many articles to look at how to program my calculator and whatever. And it just took me forever to learn. Testing took me a ridiculous amount of time. Object-oriented programming just was, okay, I don't quite understand this animal and dog and cat example because it's not really production code. It's just a made-up example to simplify it. That stuff takes so much longer, but now you can actually go ask your questions right to ChatGPT or whatever. Okay, explain this to me. I roughly get it, but how does this connect to that? And it can do that stuff for you. So I feel like if anything, it's going to be a superpower, but we'll probably have quite some time to figure out how it all comes together. And as it's getting way, way better, it'll be a lot more practical to use all the time. But up until now, it's been kind of hit or miss. But I think it's getting to a point where it's, well, now every developer, it makes sense to be using it quite a bit. Sometimes maybe you are doing greenfield stuff and don't want influence from some existing stuff, because that's kind of the thing about AI is it can regurgitate, but that's all it can generally do.
My little brother is close to graduating with a CS degree, and he's like, I feel like I need a portfolio website. What should I do? Oh my God, just thinking about all the static site generators out there, all the stuff. And I was like, you know what? I would use Next.js, sent him like a link to 2 different tools that would literally just build you a Next.js site if you told it what to do. And he's, what's Tailwind? What's this? What's that? But by the end of the day, he's like, here's the link. I built it. There you go. He's like, I used one of those AI tools you sent me. So he's a complete junior, had never used Next.js, didn't even know. He's like, I don't understand. Like, I tried to open a local port to see the website running and it's not running. Like, I didn't even respond. He'd already learned by then, oh, I need to run an npm start. Figured out all these things. So started from nothing, had a portfolio website by the end of the day. And that's the type of stuff I spent like months on when I was learning.
Yeah.
He's going to be better than you.
Probably. That's what you'd hope, right?
He's the big guns.
I didn't have someone like me helping me when I was his age, so I would hope he'd be better than me.
But because of you.
Exactly.
Which, would that make you the best still?
Exactly. I'm the older brother, Jason. I'm better at him than everything, except for video games. It's a constant struggle to maintain your dominance when you're the older brother and you're out of the house.
But doesn't Elon supposedly pay people to play video games for him?
So, yeah, he 100% does. And I'm not even willing to say allegedly.
So
they did the math, bro. I saw the math. I saw the math on that.
To do that too, to keep up. So
yeah, I got to grind way more hours to just keep up.
Let me tell you a quick story about our sponsor, honeybadger.io. One time, a customer of theirs had a background job run overnight that caused hundreds of thousands of errors to be reported to Honeybadger by mistake. Like many other error tracking and performance monitoring tools, Honeybadger bills for monthly usage, and so this customer's mistake was going to cost them a lot of extra money that month. If you've ever used a monitoring service, you might have experienced something like this yourself. Well, fortunately for this customer, they emailed Honeybadger's support and received the most amazing reply. Honey Badger was resetting their monthly quota and canceling the bill. This is just one example of how much the small team at Honey Badger cares about their users. Ask anyone you know and you'll hear similar stories. Go check them out at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Don't forget to bookmark it. That's www.honeybadger.io.
Well, you said it already.
You've alluded.
You've alluded and you said it on X or Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Salutes.
Everyone get your F key ready for the chat.
I'm out.
F's in the chat.
No, I just tired. We've been doing this 6 years.
Has it been that long already?
Yeah, it'll be 7 years in June.
Dang. That's crazy.
It's like a third of my life, a fourth of my life.
Yeah. I toyed with it for a while. I enjoy hanging out and talking on the podcast. I legit feel like I'm out of things to say right now. Just tired. No big drama or anything like that. It's not a huge commitment, especially the way we do it, but it is still one more commitment.
It's enough.
So,
yeah.
We could start drama right now, though. So we can get a YouTube video with a picture of the Remote Ruby logo on fire in a dumpster. And it's like, what happened? I just want that drama video, dude.
Yeah. You will always have a slot in our Zoom calls. We won't cap it and block you from Zoom. And maybe that's the fun thing. You'll just show up in the middle. You'll know when we're recording and just join Zoom in the middle of it. That's what I want to have happen.
Everyone keeps asking if we're going to replace you. I'm insulted that you would even insinuate that Jason can be replaced.
Right.
3 people is hard for a podcast. When it's just us hanging out, it's much easier. But an interview, it's so hard having 4 people in the Zoom.
Do you remember the days when we were on Zencaster and we couldn't see each other? So then someone would start talking and the rest of us would also start talking when there was a pause. And it was just impossible to coordinate. That was ridiculous.
Awful.
Luckily, we're on Zoom now. Thanks, Paul. But yeah, it's tough. The benefit was we would have probably shut down the podcast a long time ago without the 3 of us, because it just makes it easier if one person's sick or whatever. There's just so much variety that happens week to week. And like you were saying, there's not a lot that changes every week. And so it's kind of hard to come with new stuff all the time. You can do interviews, but then that's a lot of extra work to coordinate and just interview
it's a different
people.
type of mental energy doing interviews.
100%.
You have to stay engaged, and then you have to be watching everyone else. Is someone else about to ask a question? Like, where is this going to go? So yeah, it's been fun. I've gotten to like meet a bunch of people, which is what I wanted to do. And I hope to show up every now and then. I just can't keep showing up every week and keep my job and my marriage and my side business.
Well, one of those has to be the priority, and it's not Remote Ruby.
I don't know. Andrew's a pretty big priority in my life.
I was about to say, I know what it should be. And I was running through like lists of jokes and like, nah, I'm just going to let him. Yeah, I know what the answer is.
No, man.
It is Remote Ruby. Yeah.
No, obviously not.
That's the thing I'll miss most is just shit talking Andrew for an hour every week.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that at work.
Yeah, we'll have to work on something together once.
If you end up in marriage counseling over this, Andrew will just bust in the door. It was about me.
No, it would be between us, bro. What are you talking about?
But no, it'll be good. But it is hard. It feels like when stuff happens in Ruby or Rails, it all comes at once. It's a ton of stuff, and then it's nothing for like years. And so I feel like I can only come on here and be like, well, I hate writing front end in Rails so many times before there's nothing left to say.
Did you see Inertia got transferred over to Laravel officially? Pretty cool.
I saw that and my thought was, oh, I thought that already happened.
Yeah, I forgot that Jonathan Renink works at Tailwind.
Right.
They're so tight between Tailwind and the Laravel crew. It seemed like the same group of people to me from the outside. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Laravel, he mentioned this in his post, but they did so much to get 2.0 out that I had just assumed it had become a Laravel thing officially.
I don't remember. Do they use Inertia to build a lot of their products at Laravel? Is the Laravel Cloud on
I don't know.
Inertia?
That's a good question.
Not actually sure.
My impression is that some of the older stuff was just straight up Vue.
Yeah. Well, I think the older stuff, yeah.
But I have no idea what they do now. I would assume
Taylor
so.
just this morning posted something about some of the Laravel side of things for Laravel Cloud and what they're using for that. I have to go look that up because he also talked about, obviously we're using Kubernetes and Terraform and other things for the back end cloud stuff. But for their Laravel application, it's definitely JavaScript heavy on the front end. I watched his demo of it the other day at Laracon EU. Looked pretty great. It's cool that there's an official from the framework hosting service like that, which is pretty dope. It's also awesome that we have Kamal, but it's just nice to have a commercially supported one like a Heroku, but from the people who can never just abandon it for a period of time. That is their
and they
livelihood.
make money. Yeah, like you said, they make money on it. They can afford to support people.
Yeah. Talking to Taylor, clearly you're already successful. You probably don't need the money. But to build something as risky and complex as Laravel Cloud, raising money does make sense. But why even do that and basically end up having onboarding a boss into your company? It was kind of neat because he was just more or less, I feel like the community deserves it. That's what I should be doing, is reinvesting and just keeping aligned with the needs of the community. And I was like, dang, that's awesome to take on that investment and a heck of a lot of stress, I'm sure, because they've hired a ridiculous amount of people and grown a ton in the last 6 months or whatever. But I thought that was cool.
And they're still hiring. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Very actively hiring. I don't know what their team size is up to now, but it's probably like similar in size to 37 Signals, I would guess.
Yeah, probably at least 37 people. I don't know anything about the VC world, but I imagine if you're a VC, you just want to throw money at Taylor Otwell.
Yeah.
Look how successful he's been on his own for years. He's clearly really good at it.
Yeah. And he's good about driving the future. And they have such a regular release of updates and changes and things that helps keep the community like chomping at the bit for new stuff and whatever. Jorge's been teasing our Active Record search recently. And I'm, hey, when is that shipping? I want my hands on that. I'm looking forward to a few of those things because so much of Rails is extracted from Basecamp or Hay or once like Campfire and stuff. We don't have as forward direction of a roadmap like they do with Laravel because they're like just working on Laravel itself is their only concern, which is different, very different philosophy, but also pretty similar in a lot of different ways too. So
I feel like we should mention, we kind of slip topics, but I would say that the show's not going anywhere. We're going to miss Jason. He's going to be back at some points, but Chris and I are not going anywhere, and the show's not going anywhere. Chris, under the threat of violence, the show is not going anywhere. Chris knows how fast I can get to St. Louis.
At some point, it will just be you monologuing for an hour.
Dude,
every
if that's what it has to be, I will literally pump CPR into this thing until it's completely flatlined.
Without this, it's kind of feels like some therapy every week, just sitting and hanging out and chatting about stuff and ranting on random things. I would definitely miss it. It'd be tough. I imagine Jason will be back for those moments where I just want to rant about something. We've got a spot for you, my friend.
Hang out with the boys.
It's so tough because generally we have to record during the workday sometime. Gosh, how many times has there been a fire and one of us is on the call kind of working actively during the podcast? Because
I think that happens.
You can't really schedule it other way. Yeah, it's so hard.
When there's three people, it kind of like leaves open the opportunity for that to happen, which is helpful when there's a fire.
Back when it was just us, Jason, how many weeks did we just be like, I'm not feeling it this week. Let's just punt it.
There's literally an episode that we're still alive or something like that because it had been like a month
I remember
without
that.
anything.
I don't think it's bad if we ever decided to do like once a month or whatever. Once a week is almost too often. But I think if we did once every other week, it might be easier to just skip. And then it might end up being the once a month automatically. But I'd like to keep it to the once a week for my own sanity.
This is the only time I see friends during the week. Jason, what are your favorite memories? If there are any main episodes or like main guests or like any moments that stood out to you? I know it's a large swath of time, so.
It is a large swath of time. I actually was thinking about this. I'm going to start sad and then get better. I was actually thinking when
Today's episode, when you left us,
well,
that's the saddest.
that's the saddest. I was thinking about when Noah Gibbs passed. It made me think we got to interview him subsequently, like he did at Southeast Ruby, stuff like that. That and like Chris Seaton, we interviewed Chris one time. I just started thinking about the people who like passed away and the opportunity I got to connect with them because of this. So that's why I say I started off sad because that was the first thing that I actually thought about.
That's so good. Same thing. I'm so grateful I got to meet them and become friends with them and stuff before. We may never have crossed paths, just been like a fan on the internet, on X or whatever, on the blogs and stuff. But that's probably the coolest part about the podcast.
Some other moments, Jose Halim's episode. We'd never talked to him before. Haven't talked to him since that episode. But for like 3 hours, it felt like we were like best friends with that dude.
He was awesome.
We ended that call and talked for like another hour and a half, and he was just like showing us stuff. That one always really stuck with me. It was really cool. God, I mean, we've talked to a ton.
Derek
of people.
Sivers.
Oh my God. That was Derek when Taylor agreed to come on the show. We had Adam. Those were kind of like, oh, wow. That was cool. It was fun hanging out with them.
That reminds me of the RailsConf where I met Andrew, I think. I was just following Jason along because I didn't know anybody at RailsConf. What was this, Atlanta or whatever?
It was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Minneapolis, 2019.
Yep.
That's the one where David gave his keynote. Let's ask him to be on the podcast.
No,
and we
he
waited.
was supposed to be. We talked beforehand, and he's like, yeah, find me at RailsConf.
Oh, yeah. Well, then we were in the crowd of people waiting to talk to him for like 45 minutes, and eventually they all trickle away, and we're just sheepishly like, would you come on our podcast that nobody listens to? And I just remember being like, I feel so awkward asking somebody to come on a podcast that I look up to a lot for many reasons, but also feel like I have nothing to give in return. This little podcast that we have. I don't remember how many listeners we had back then, but it was not.
You at least had one.
Yeah. But that was just a good moment I always think back to, where I was, man, that's so cool. The podcast is a great way to meet your heroes and people that you would normally not have the opportunity to chat with and stuff. Grabbing an hour of Adam Lathan's time, that's a pretty big ask. But if you have a podcast, there's a way for him to get something out of it in return to not just you taking their time.
Yeah. Derek Sivers is probably the most nervous I've been for a podcast because obviously he comes across as the most sweet human being ever. But I've read so much of his stuff and like elevated him so much in my mind. And it was him coming on the show to talk about something he doesn't talk about a ton. I think that was also part of the reason he agreed to do it. That was cool. I'll never forget us finishing that episode and that man just walking out of that room, leaving his camera running. I was like,
that was badass, dude. The man literally just stood up and walked away, dude. That was baller shit.
That is a power play. And I was like, respect.
He asserted his dominance right then.
I did that the other day on Tuple with Colin. I got to go. And I just stood up and left Tuple running because I knew he would close it. But I was like, this is how we do the power move. Oh, well, some of the funny things have been like people who have joined the podcast but didn't really know that we stop recording when we say goodbyes. It's not actually like close Zoom. It's just hit stop recording. So some people have closed Zoom and we're like, oh, we were hoping to like wrap up and conclude and have a little chat afterwards.
Say thank you, like bye.
Those are always funny moments.
I think the first time we recorded with DHH, it was like that. All right, see you guys. And then he just bailed. We're like, all right, see you.
Yeah.
Subsequent times.
And sometimes I assume they have a meeting they're late for or something and they went on too far or whatever, but always funny.
I'm thinking back about my favorite Jason moments. And I'm thinking about there have been the Hamill reading, one of my favorites. There was an episode that Jason and I recorded in a hallway staircase in Las Vegas at a casino that is now gone. That was great.
Paul made that one awesome.
Paul did make that one great. When we first hung out for the first time in Colorado at RubyConf, we went to a Denver Nuggets game and we did a group podcast. That was a ton of fun. That was the first time we'd ever podcasted in person together.
Yeah, it was the first time we'd ever hung out, really.
And I was leading to that moment, which was because during the pandemic, you sent me a text that were like, hey, Chris and I talked. And if you want to become a co-host on our show because you had to leave the show that you were on, you're welcome to. And that was kind of where it all started. That was my favorite memory.
Yeah, that was cool. I remember in Denver getting offended because you said you're a lot funnier in person.
And the fact that you still remember that is crazy.
I was so offended. What do you mean I'm not funny online?
I can't wait for your tombstone to say he was a lot funnier in person.
Jason has a degree of physical comedy that doesn't shine through on the screen.
That's true. Quite dry on the screen.
What about you, Chris? You got any favorite moments with Jason?
I can't even remember half of them. It's been, what, you said 6, almost 7 years or something?
Yeah, 6.5 maybe.
Wild. I fondly look back to you being like, I want to start a online meetup. And then it was, well, this is hard and I can't find speakers. Would you speak? And I remember doing some horrible talk or whatever for it. I had never really given any talks ever. I had maybe done a couple at little meetups or whatever, nothing really remotely, which felt weird too at the time. It's totally different now. It's a normal thing for us these days, but that was an interesting time where community was needed. There was needed to have some way of doing that. Doesn't sound hard to do a meetup once a month, find a speaker or whatever, and get people in a Zoom call. It's ridiculously hard. Way harder than doing the podcast, I would say. And I feel like it was just such a natural thing where we were like, well, we end up on Zoom hanging out once a week just to talk privately. And it was like, why don't we record that? Maybe that's what we could do. And that was the birth of Remote Ruby back in the day, which I am very grateful. You emailed me out of the blue. I forget what year RailsConf was in Kansas City. I was early in Go Rails and too poor to attend RailsConf and decided, screw it, I'll hop in the car, drive out and meet this stranger. We had a beer or whatever. My car got backed into.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forget what happened. I was at Chipotle or something and somebody backed a truck into the back of my Mini Cooper. Had to get a whole new back door on there and stuff. So it was a small price to pay to start a podcast, I would say, but that was fun. It was just a random chance encounter to make lifelong friends, which is so great. Those are the things that really make you look back and you're like, I could have said no. I could have ignored it. It could have gone to spam and we may never have been friends or whatever, or we would have
thought you were a real jerk,
but it would have been, yeah, it could have happened, you know?
It could have.
It's funny because similar story with Josh and Ben from Honey Badger, like Ruby Midwest in Kansas City back in 2011 or 2010. I have a Honey Badger t-shirt from that conference, and I got it from their table. So it had to have been one of them there. I don't remember at all, but I was too young and too nervous because I'm at a conference where I don't know anybody. I don't even really know Ruby at all. One of my friends brought me out there, and sure, that sounds like fun. Programming conference. I'm in a CS degree. Like, let's do it. And didn't end up becoming friends with him until years later. But I was like, man, this sucks. We could have met then and become
Right.
friends and had so many good conversations over those extra years or whatever. But better late than never. But chance encounters make a world of difference in your life. So
Yeah, this is going to sound more sentimental than I mean it to, but literally the best thing this podcast did was afford me relationships with so many people, because as over the top as I can be, it takes a lot for me to like get out of that shell to do that. And so like doing this podcast made it a lot easier for me not to have to like go to conferences. The first RailsConf I went to, like, I was so tired because I worked so hard to meet people and make friends. And it paid off, even that first one. But it did help doing this because it gave me a common thing to talk to people about if they listened. And I don't know, like Drew Bragg and I, like, become good friends. Andrew and I, like, Chris and I. Chris, his wife, my wife and I have a group chat called the Cholivers. We literally talk all day, not all day, but we talk every day usually in there. And like, I don't know, I'm just really grateful for those types of relationships.
We gave a conference talk together about podcasting. I kind of wanted to say this, that when I remembered us doing that, you and Chris starting this, but it was you. You had the idea to kind of get this all rolling years and years ago. But there have been so many people who have come up to me like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast because y'all inspired me. You are directly responsible for a lot of other podcasts that exist right now.
It's cool.
You're responsible. You're to blame. Whatever
Yes.
sentiment it might be.
The Godfather.
This is the other thing I was thinking about, actually. I was thinking about when Brittany left the Ruby on Rails podcast because she just disappeared off social media too.
Yeah.
Another power move. I was thinking about A, how much I miss Brittany, and B, how influential and how great of a friend she was through all of this. The last thing she and I did together was a joint podcast recording at RailsConf 2022, when I was in Atlanta. She was so good at getting people together to do the group recordings at RubyConf 2021. Like Andrew and I, that was the first time we were recorded together.
I got a
And,
picture
like,
of it.
You and I were just a bunch of children. There was a bunch of grown-ups recording, and you and I were just
Poking
dumb
each other,
jokes to
making
each other.
fart jokes, and like,
Yeah.
playing footsies under the table.
Yeah, and that is correct, Andrew. You were not invited to the RailsConf one.
You're right. I'm not brand risk.
We just couldn't afford that much swagger.
There you go. I want people, after they listen to this show, to think about their favorite episodes that you were in, or the favorite things that you've said over the years, and tweet them or post them or send them at you. Because I'm going to read some.
That'd be cool.
That'd be good.
Because I remember one
Yeah.
years and years ago, we had a deep talk about ADHD, and people still bring that up to me. Like, yeah, one time you and Jason spoke really honestly about that. It made me realize I didn't have to be worried about people finding out. That feels good.
Yeah, and my like willingness to talk about that stuff is, I felt comfortable just like the first RailsConf I went to in 2015. That conference made me realize how much I clicked with this community and how free I felt to be myself. And I haven't felt that most of my life. I don't really feel like I can be me because I'm odd. So yeah.
Same. Because when you grew up, people did everything they could to get you to stop being the way you were.
Exactly. And
Yep. Same Z's.
they were right in some ways, but it made me push down a lot of like who I really was, because I just became scared to really show who I was, because I was scared that people wouldn't accept me and things like that. I'm still weird about this podcast. Even though I'm leaving, I'm always nervous to record because I don't want to be me. But anyway, I'll be at Sin City. I got to speak on something.
Cool. Wow.
You going to RailsConf? I'm very obligated to make sure that you're there.
Drew pushed me to submit a talk.
Didn't push me. Now I know what kind of friend he is.
I submitted one. It's really important to me to be there because of what I just talked about. My first RailsConf was the like gateway drug of this whole community and this whole thing. So I would really like to be there for the last one.
I agree. Mine was too. And if y'all will be there, I will be there, obviously.
Well, I'll have to be there as I'm co-chairing it this year. When Ufu comes knocking and says, hey, I want you to co-chair, and you say, yeah, especially when it's the last one. But Andy Kroll gave me the warning, though, of how much work it is. And I'm sure it will be, but it'll be worth it. And I'm not across the pond like him. But yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be similar to this episode. Looking back on all the good memories and years of RailsConf and stuff, it's time for things to change, and that's okay. And look into where the future takes us and all that. That's kind of our theme we were going for with RailsConf this year is what are all the good times and whatever. There's so many good memories and friends made and whatever else from how many years of RailsConfs have there been? I don't even know.
2006 or 7 was the first one.
Sheesh.
But yeah, so the other day I was reading about this new feature in Rails where Andrew's trying to leave, so I'm trying to extend this.
No, I know exactly what you're doing. That shit's funny. I'm going to miss you, and I'm very thankful that you brought me on this show. And
it was Chris that brought you on, but I'll take the credit.
Well, both of y'all together. I'm thankful for both of y'all, but you're leaving and he's staying, so you get the credit.
All right, later.
Bye.
We'll see you soon, I think.
And I'll see you again.
Yeah.
Play us out, Paul. La 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 la.